All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to one of the interviews for APTA Oregon celebration of the APTA Centennial. We'll just start with introductions. So my name is Michelle Spindler. I am a second year PTA student at Lane Community College. And just a little bit more about me. Last year, I was the recipient of the Emerging Student Leader Award. And with that, I was able to attend the very first virtual House of Delegates, which was really amazing. And then this year, I have the pleasure of serving as the Student Assembly Liaison to the PTA Caucus, specifically for the Western Regional Caucus. So looking forward to that. And I have Stacy with me today, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. I'm Stacy Mosbrucker. I'm a PTA. I have been working for, almost 14 years now. Mostly in inpatient. I work at Good Samaritan Regional Medical Center in Corvallis. I also do a little bit of outpatient work, and my specialty is pelvic health.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think I also read you were also the Emerging Student Leader Award.
I was. That's how I got started. Yeah, and I think 2006.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Because that's also how I got started. So
right,
pretty cool that we share that experience
I have to warn you,
together.
Once you're in, you don't leave.
I know, right? I know. It's great to be in, though. All right. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Just so people have a little bit of background, some of the topics we'll be covering is the PTA Caucus, the role of the PTA representative, some leadership encouragement for involvement, and just overall APTA. So if you're ready, we'll just go right ahead.
Sure.
All right. So please describe the PTA Caucus and the role of the PTA representative.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess that's one thing I forgot to mention is that I actually have held that position a couple of times. I was the PTA representative for Oregon from 2007 to 2009. And then again, briefly, recently. And then I have also served in the role as alternate PTA rep. And the PTA caucus is a really interesting thing. If you look at the history, it emerged because we needed a voice. PTAs needed a voice within the association. But it's evolved into this really cool collaborative way that PTAs can kind of not section off, but we can have our own area to discuss maybe PTA specific issues, but also so that we can come together collectively and kind of be a brain trust to go then back to our delegations at the chapter level, delegations meaning the states basically, and sections, and then kind of relay information. So the caucus is made up of PTA representatives from all the different delegations, and it is a body that works to govern kind of within itself, but then also to give input to the larger governing body within the House of Delegates. They work year round, they never stop. And now it's kind of grown into something where they have, they've sectioned off into task forces as well, to really focus on how to help advance the profession. It's sort of the PTA's way of how can I get in there and help, you know, what can we do to continue to advance our profession? What do we need the most right now? And then it works both directions. That's the really interesting part about the caucus and about the role of the PTA rep is that it goes multiple directions. So it's a multifaceted, wears many hats kind of role. So it's not just taking information from our delegation and then feeding it this direction. It's also top down, taking that information and trying to then feed it back to the grassroots level at the chapter level and let all the PTAs know, specifically like for us within Oregon, what's happening at the national level.
Right.
So, as far as the role of the PTA rep, that is extremely similar in the sense that you work at a national level with your, so I'll speak specifically to Oregon because that's what I know, but you work with your delegation leading up to the House of Delegates mostly, but pretty much year round as well, to kind of prepare for the House, to look over the motions, to see what direction our profession is going and where governance is going to take us and what we feel strongly about, what our membership feels strongly about. Occasionally giving the PTA perspective, but to be honest, it's not exactly PTA specific. It's good to have a rep there that is a voice for PTAs in case something specific does come up. But really, you're just part of the delegation. So working with the Oregon delegation towards whatever's happening within the House of Delegates, but then also coming back to the PTA caucus and working with them And then at the chapter level, also staying connected with PTAs throughout Oregon. That's really a huge part of it that sometimes unfortunately gets lost because there's just so much to do. There's so many things going on in Oregon and so many amazing PTAs. It's hard to connect with all of them, to get all voices heard, to try and draw people in, to kind of get that collective mind going. So I'm really hopeful because I think there's some things on the horizon within Oregon's bylaws, hopefully, fingers crossed, that will kind of section off that position and make it a little easier to then focus on what's happening within Oregon chapter versus what's happening at the national level.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. That was all very informative. And I think you just really hit the major points of like, there's just so much you can get involved in, especially for PTAs. And I think it's really cool too, that you can start as a student as well, just how we started with the Emerging Student Leader Award. And I just feel like it builds and builds and builds, and there's just so many opportunities. So I just love that. All right, we'll move on. What sparked your interest in leadership in the association? Which I know we touched on that a little.
Yes. Yeah. Being a student and having that, first time that the OPTA comes in and says, here's what we do. And we have this Emerging Student Leader Award, and this is what the House of Delegates is. And it can be really confusing for students trying to figure out, what are you telling me? What's my opportunity? And how do I even know what this governance is? You haven't been in the profession yet. So it can be really overwhelming to try and figure out. But I love seeing so many PTA students jump in there and say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn.
That was me.
Yep, that was me too. So I got a chance to go to Florida for the House of Delegates, which was really fun. I went actually with, that's the other great part about the Emerging Student Leader Award is there's always one for a PT as well, a PT student. And so then you get that connection between schools because both of you are there going, I'm not quite sure what's happening and what's going on. So you get to do that together. So I actually went, fun fact, I was an Emerging Student Leader with Tasha McElveen, who has served in the chief delegate role for many years and has a delegate for many years of the House of Delegates. So she also got hooked and stayed. So that's where my spark began. But to be honest, it initially was about getting information and networking. I just wanted to know these people and understand the profession a little bit better. And, it wasn't a bad thing to put on my resume. But then it just grew into something bigger where it's amazing to be part of something bigger than you and to be able to have a voice in that and to see which direction it goes. That's really what has kept me going, is knowing that I actually can make a change.
Yes, totally. And I feel like I was in the same boat as you because it was actually you and someone else, Jeannie Thompson, who I'm sure people, when you watch these videos, you'll get to know. But you both came and spoke when I was a first year. I think it was like my third week into the program. But you kind of get hooked and you just want to learn more and you want to help. And even if you know nothing about it, you're like, I'm just going to jump in and see where it takes me. So I just love that. It's such a good, cool way to get started.
I have a quick question for you, since you were the Emerging Student Leader. So I've never experienced the House of Delegates virtually. And I know when we came to talk to your class, we went on and on about that feeling of presence when we first walked into the ballroom, and there's everyone from around our nation, working as one mind, working towards one goal, and how overwhelming that was. Did you get that virtually? How was it?
I didn't get the overwhelming feeling, no, because it was different room that we got to be in versus all the delegates, because sometimes they would break off and have their own meetings, which we could join later with the Oregon delegation. But it was kind of cool because I felt like, I've never been there in person, but sometimes the PTAs, you're not all on the floor, you're just in the gallery. Right. Where this way, virtually, you felt like everyone was the same because it was all virtually. We're all joining from a computer. Yeah. But it's kind of hard because I don't have anything to compare it to, but I thought it was still amazing. And the Oregon delegation was awesome because we stay up to date through email, through different apps on our phone. We're always going into like breakout rooms when there's breaks to talk about everything, what's going on. Especially as a first time, you're like, this is so much, but it's so cool. And just trying to stay up to date with all the language. And I thought it was amazing. I thought I was a little sad that I couldn't celebrate in person with everyone. Like at the end when they closed everything and I felt like I needed to hug people and like cheer and celebrate.
Yes.
But you're
okay.
like,
So you did get a little bit of that experience then, because it does at some points get kind of overwhelming. Like, this is actually an emotional experience.
Yes, in that realm, yes, totally. But I was like, I'm in my kitchen, like by myself.
Right,
but,
right.
It was still amazing.
Yeah, I used to tell my husband all the time, it's like nerding out. It's my version of nerding out. I get to go and just nerd out with all my friends. So
I know. I really want to go in person one day just so I can have both experiences. But virtually, I thought they did a really, really good job.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Really, no, it's okay. All right, let me get the next one. As a PTA, what has been the most rewarding part of being in leadership?
Oh, 100% the people. The people involved. There's a certain type of person that gets involved, and actually I shouldn't say it that way. There's multiple different types of people that get involved for multiple different reasons. But once you're in, and it's really fun to get to know everybody that likes to be involved, whether it be students, which you probably learned. All of us that have been in it for a while love to see students come in. We love the new ideas that you guys bring. You come from a different perspective. And so it's really interesting to pick your brains and to just see what you think about the experience. What's really needed in the profession is that fresh look every now and then, because sometimes we get bogged down into the day-to-day of what we're doing instead of thinking big picture. So from the leadership perspective, that's what I get from it, is I get to learn every single time I talk to somebody, a new perspective that I hadn't considered, a new avenue within our profession that I didn't even know existed. Being able to connect to somebody and watch them then go on their own and do something big is pretty fantastic. One of my favorite things to do, actually, that I learned from Derek Fenwick, was to just sit back and observe and see what their strengths are, and then go from there, instead of constantly being like, hey, you should be part of the OPTA. Hey, you should do this, and kind of glomming onto people. Just sit back and watch what they're good at, and then say, you know what? This seems like a passion for you, and I think I have a really good avenue for that. And if you can latch onto somebody's passion and kind of send them in the right direction, then it is so rewarding to see what they can do. And it benefits me in my profession, because now I have another amazing person working for the same goal. So.
Right. Oh, I love that. And I think that's good too for students to know that it's okay if you don't know anything as well, like coming in, like we did it, you just got to like say yes. And then like you said, you meet these amazing people and they have all these different experiences and you get to share and then just kind of see where it leads you. But there's so many opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's one thing I love.
Yes. I tell people all the time, especially PTAs, because we tend to be a little bit harder to pull in. I don't know what it is. I don't know where we hear that we are less than, or that we shouldn't be part of this. But some PTAs come in very reserved, and I tell them that's okay. 99% of the problem is just getting you there. Once you're there, I don't care if you're a fly on the wall, you're still an important part of this membership.
Totally. Yes. I love that. All right. So what do you say to encourage others to become involved in the association, and why do you think involvement is important?
Yeah, well, we touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I feel like that's a loaded question, because
I know there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it. Yeah. There isn't one motivation for anyone. You really have to figure out what their motivation is. Some people are just looking for something to put on their resume. Some people are looking just to see, there's the what's in it for me type of person. And so you have to kind of talk to them from that angle of like, here are the things you can get from being a member. And if you want something tangible, this benefits your patients. Here are these handouts, look at the latest research. You'll be the only one in your clinic to know what the legislature is doing. One of my favorite things to do for clinicians that I find that are kind of coming from this approach, especially after going to the House of Delegates, is I would find a motion that had been passed and then bring it to them and say, did you know this just happened in your profession and you had no idea? Actually, it was a few years ago, we altered the scope of practice for PTs. And I brought it to one of the PTs that I knew was interested in getting involved, but I wasn't quite certain where she was coming from or what her reservations were. And so I brought it to her and said, just so you know, your scope of practice changed and you had no idea. She went, what? And so I showed her the motion and what we had been talking about and everything. And connected her with the right people, and she dove right in. And she's still
I love
involved,
that.
which is awesome. She's actually one of our board of directors.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And just showing them that one thing.
So you really have to, I like to look at what their motivation is. Some people, students especially, are looking for that bigger picture, because it's so hard as a student to really dive into the details of what the profession is looking for. Specifically, governance and legislature is really overwhelming for students, because if you don't have that kind of background to begin with, it doesn't make a lot of sense to you. Payment issues sometimes just don't make a lot of sense. And so you find some people that are like, well, I don't know this, so I want to know this. And then you can connect them with what they're missing. Or you find people that are so reserved and say, I don't know enough about that. I don't think I should be part of that. And so you kind of tease them into it a little bit and say, well, where can you start? But really the biggest thing I find is the reluctance is in time management. You know, I just don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And I totally respect that, because we're all, especially now, we're all really busy in totally different ways than we have been. But like I said before, 99% of the problem is just showing up. So if you can put it on your calendar and just simply show up, you will find that showing up gets easier. And then before you know it, you actually have an opinion about some of the things that are happening. And then you learn to raise your voice about those opinions. Or maybe you find that emailing somebody is a little bit easier. And then, you know, you look down the road 6 months later and you have this whole network of people you didn't expect to have, and a new understanding of what happens behind the scenes. So
yeah. And I think going off of that too, with the pandemic, the showing up part,
yes,
I feel like it's easier for some students now, because it's like, just join the call. You don't even have to have your camera on, just like join the call, be a part of it, and just kind of see where it takes you. At least you have people's names, you have people's faces, someone to reach out to. But I guess that's like a clinical pearl kind of thing, is like with the pandemic, is we can join now virtually. And I think that hopefully maybe helps more students get involved, because like you said, it's just showing up and then see where that takes you.
Yes,
so
you don't even have to know what you're doing. You can just listen.
Right. But then
I like to also take, I like to take things back to just the basics, which I'm sure you've heard either Jeannie or I say in any kind of meeting, or when we talk to schools, we like to go back to this, but we use the analogy of we're all in the same boat together, whether you want to be or not, we're in the same boat. Some of us are going to pick up some oars, and we're going to decide the trajectory that we're going. And if you don't like that trajectory, or you're not sure where we're going, then you got to pick up an oar too.
There you go.
You got to be involved. You have to know where your profession is going. And I've had lots of clinicians that I work with actually be upset about something, like say the cut that was coming up. And be really upset about it. And that's when they start to get, well, wow, this affects my bottom line. What can I do about it? And it's like, hey, guess what? You can actually do something about this. And here's how you do it. And all you need to do is just be a member, so that you get that email, click the open button and open that email and read it. And you will be in the know far more than a lot of other clinicians.
Totally. So true. All right. So just one last question for you today. What do you think the APTA provides for you, for your patients, and for the profession?
What doesn't?
Another big one.
Well, for me, first of all, something tangible to kind of hang on to is I think that the APTA is actually underutilized for our patients. It is a great way for clinicians, instead of recreating the wheel, you can go to your specific sections and you can find all kinds of handouts and patient information that you can just print out for patients, look it up and say, hey, why don't you take a look at this? And the best part is it's all branded with APTA. So they know that you care enough to be part of an association, or that at the very least you're printing something off from an association. And so that they know that standardized, that somebody is keeping an eye on you, that what you're doing goes beyond just, I show up at work and I do these things. It's I have a greater understanding of my profession, and I have expertise in this area. So I think it really gives patients a peace of mind. But that tangible piece of I can click a button and I can print things off for my patients, and I don't have to completely recreate the wheel and create it all myself, I think is really amazing. Not to mention the research that I can get a hold of. I mean, professionally, it really helps me in the clinic. It's not just that big picture governance that we've been talking about. It specifically trickles down to, in the clinic, what are you doing? And it gives you forums to actually talk to other clinicians far across the country and say, I'm not certain that I agree with this. How do you do this? What do we think about, you know, PTAs performing certain mobilizations, you know,
Sure.
having those bigger conversations and really getting down to the nitty gritty. It provides that opportunity. And then professionally, I mean, just growth upon growth upon growth. There's not an avenue that they haven't looked at.
Yes.
Into administration, business. I mean, to be honest, I think the APTA, and specifically this section, well, now it's called the Academy of Pelvic Health. I think they have a lot to do with the direction that my profession went, because I started out like every other student. I was going to own my own sports fitness facility, and I was going to do sports medicine, and that's what I was going to do. And then I went the completely other direction and worked at a hospital, and that kind of trickled down to, you know, talking to people in certain areas and deciding that actually my passion was in pelvic health, which I never in a million years would have thought. If you would have asked the student, Stacy, that's the direction. I didn't even know that existed, to be honest. So
I know, I didn't either.
Yeah.
I'm
Most
starting to
say that too.
Yes. And I love that too, especially as a student. My program is really good about having assignments and encouraging us to use APTA a lot. And so that's really helped me, because sometimes the site can be overwhelming, but once you figure it out and you can tell how many resources you have just by a few clicks online for yourself to continue to learn and for your patients. I mean, it's just amazing. And I haven't been able to use it out in the clinic yet, but I'm excited to be a member and I can use that in the future. So Thanks for giving that example, because sometimes I feel like I forget that, you know, I feel like right now I'm using it for like learning purposes for myself, but it's amazing that in the future, when I'm treating more patients, that I can use it to help them. So
yes,
I love
absolutely.
that.
I'm kind of like you too. I forget about like the little clinical things, the little pearls that are available to us through APTA. I tend to be more of a big picture person. Jeannie and I joke all the time. We work well together because I have the big, well, it works both directions, I guess. I was going to say I have the big pictures and she's able to whittle it down, but I think a lot of the time she has the big picture and I'm able to whittle it down. So who knows?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stacy. That concludes our interview and I had a great time.
Yes. I can't wait to see you again.
Yes, you too.
See ya.